Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. Kentucky Today is the news resource of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, and joining me, as usual, Mark Maynard, our managing editor, and Chip Hutchison, the content editor for Kentucky Today. Guys, I want to start with a story of great faithfulness and resourcefulness and resilience that followed a natural disaster. On Easter Sunday, First Baptist Church of Mayfield, Kentucky, is going to return to its building for the first time since a tornado heavily damaged that building back in December of 2021. So it's been almost 3 years, 2.5 years, since First Baptist Mayfield was in its building. And Marina Shelton, who is our social media and web guru, wrote a story about that, and she's going to tell us about what's going on there at First Baptist Mayfield as they prepare to celebrate the return to their building. Her husband, Mason, by the way, is one of the pastors at First Baptist Mayfield. Marina, we're glad you're here. First, talk about kind of what a long, hard trek this has been.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's a pleasure to talk about this. Our church is so near and dear to me, and it has been a long journey for us since the tornado hit. It's been a long time meeting at the Graves County High School Performing Arts Center. I think the hardest part about the last few years has been just the feeling of unsettledness, almost like Exodus in the Bible. You're just wandering around different meeting spaces. There's no consistency. It's really hard to get in a rhythm with discipleship and meeting new people, inviting new people to a different location. So in many ways, it seemed like ministry has been stalled. But yet in other ways, God has shown his faithfulness through the hardships. We've seen people come to Christ. We've seen growth happen with families and friends. And then we've had the building project itself, which has been its own beast. It's been setback after setback, and God has been faithful through it all. But it's been a long journey for our church, for sure.
So how's the church been able to kind of stay together, stay unified throughout this process? Because it's complicated by the fact that your pastor, Wes Fowler, left to become the executive director of the Missouri Baptist Convention. So there's a lot going on there at the same time.
That's right. There have been so many other things going on, like the pastor search process you mentioned. We actually just hired a new youth pastor as well. So there have been these other ebbs and flows, and the ways we have stayed unified, I think, is just through prayer and shared experiences as far as we're able. Every year we try to have a church-wide holiday meal around Thanksgiving or Christmas. That's been helpful. And then just staying connected with prayer requests and Sunday school classes that have met in banks and homes and even at a local restaurant. It's been crucial for our church members to stay connected with each other so that we can be on the same page moving forward with a new leader.
We have to say that your husband, Mason, has played a key role in rebuilding that church. So let's give a shout out to him. It's really personal to him and to you to walk into that building on Sunday.
That's exactly right. I think both of us will shed some tears along with probably everyone else in attendance, just recognizing all the difficulties that's brought us to that moment. After Wes left, my husband Mason took on the building portion of the project, and it has been more decisions than you would ever dream to make. It's been so many frustrations and setbacks, and coming to the end of this journey and seeing, okay, we've made it. Yes, we can celebrate and we can move forward. The building is not the end goal of our ministry, but it's highlighted the fact that we need it to do some certain aspects of our gospel ministry, and we will both breathe a sigh of relief knowing we can go back in those doors on Easter Sunday.
I am sure you will. You're going to be writing a story, a follow-up story about the service itself that'll drop probably on Monday. But just talk about kind of what will happen, what the process will be of returning to the building.
Yes. So on Easter Sunday, it'll be a unique service. We're going to all start outside and walk in the building together. And then we will have a little message time, both from Wes Fowler and from our new pastor, Paul Wilkerson. There will be some new songs and old songs sung, and then we'll have a fellowship time afterwards for people to walk around and tour the campus, see where their new Sunday school classroom will be. And for visitors who come, it'll be a great connection point for them to experience what the campus feels like and meet people. There are probably half of our congregation have never even worshiped in that sanctuary because there was a renovation happening before the tornado happened. We were about to go back in, I think the week after the tornado hit, they were going to reopen the sanctuary. That all got started over. So it has been a long journey, and that will be a great day for sure.
I am curious, how much different will it look from what the old building looked like?
That's a great question. And I'm saying this, I've never worshiped in the old sanctuary, but from pictures I've seen, I think the original traditional elements will still be there, but with a few paint refreshes, some new lighting, new sound system, it's going to feel very much like an elevated space that still holds on to tradition, but is moving into this new season.
Well, it's going to be a very special Resurrection Sunday for your church, and we look forward to reading what you're going to write about it. Thanks, Marina. We appreciate your being with us.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to talk about it.
And Mark, on top of that, you did an interview with the former pastor of First Baptist Mayfield, Wes Fowler. Talk about that and what he had to say about the return to his old church.
Yeah, he's excited about coming, of course, and he talked about how Paul Wilkerson was the right person too, was the right person to come after him. He's from that area, and just has a love for that. He was an associate pastor there for 10 years under Wes, so he knows the lay of the land very well. And Wes is excited about what that church has done, what that staff has done. And Marina mentioned that they've been meeting at Graves County High School, public high school, and it's okay. We want you to come, which tells you a little bit about the community and how everybody's for everybody in that community, I think, and I think that's important to note that, for the last 3.5 years, they've been in a high school facility on Sundays with their services. So he's very excited. He says, and of course it was, the tornado was a defining moment for him and his family. They were trapped at the church, actually, as the tornado was coming overhead. And, there's still some PTSD for them, when they hear of, tornado reports or, bad weather or whatever. And that follows you wherever you go. It doesn't have to be just in Mayfield. And I know a lot of people probably that survived that tornado in Western Kentucky in 2021 feel the same way. But Wes is very excited about what's ahead for Mayfield, for First Baptist Mayfield, and he's looking forward to being there on Sunday. I could tell just from talking to him.
Chip, being from Western Kentucky, I'm sure you're not surprised at the resilience not just of First Baptist Mayfield, but of all the believers in Western Kentucky who went through that terrible storm almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, one thing he noted, Lawrence, was how the churches in that community kind of rallied around each other and came together and helped each other. And that's been a big thing too in their recovery, I guess, in all their recoveries. And of course, First Baptist was hit pretty hard, but there's a couple others that nearly got totally knocked down.
Chip, speak to this as a Western Kentucky native.
Well, certainly a story that I did about McLean County, which is in Western Kentucky. Folks there certainly exhibit what Jesus told us to do about love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that's evidenced by what Marina and Mark have been talking about, that people love one another, and they love one another in the Lord. And you see, we've seen chronicle stories of participation and partnership, one church with another. No one wants to see a church damaged or destroyed. We saw that in Paducah, West Paducah, with Mount Zion Baptist Church, which just finished up a rebuilding process following a tornado in December of 2021. So I'm very, very happy to say my roots are in Western Kentucky, because people there certainly do love one another.
Well, Kentucky Baptist Disaster Relief has continued to help those impacted by this latest round of storms, including tornadoes and very bad flooding. Mark, you've been keeping track of that. Where does that stand right now?
Well, they have 4 crews of 8 to 10 people who are in Frankfort right now, in the Frankfort area. And the incident commander, Gina Heinball, well, I spoke with her today, and she said that as of this morning, they had 86 jobs they were working. And this week, they're only working through Thursday. And, they work to completion. And then they're going home for the Easter holiday weekend. And then a new crew will come in next week. But she said the damage is it's everywhere. It's widespread. And it's getting into where other counties are starting to, they've noticed the golden shirts around and helping people, and even neighbors come out of their house. Hey, my house is flooded too. Can you come over and help me? And there's just so many calls, and they're having to figure out how they're going to get people to all these places, or as many as they can. And one thing that's helped a lot is the area churches there have sent some volunteers out to help in some of these areas to do some of these things. Right now they're doing flood recovery, which would mean, taking out all the furniture and maybe taking out the drywall and maybe the floors, cleaning the mud out. And she said the homes along the Kentucky River, nearly every one of them have been hit in some way. The water's out now, but it's just home after home after home after home. And I don't think, I think people, we see this in the news when it happens and when it's about to happen and as it's happening, and then a couple of days later it's out of the news cycle. Yeah. And but it's not out of those people's lives, and we have to remember that. One good thing, several good things, of course, but one really good thing, they had one person who they led to the Lord on the very first day they were there. And that's not only great for that person, but it's also great encouragement for them, because I know they do that every time. They, that is just a part of. They might as well. That's part of saying hello for them. They just want to share the gospel and share who Jesus is and why they're there, and that's why they're there. They're not necessarily there for those people. They're there because that's what Jesus would want them to do. And these are very dedicated, wonderful people. But anyway, they're having a whole new crew will come in next week, or 4 or 5 crews coming to Frankfort next week to continue to work there. They don't know how long, this really might take. And I was asking her, how do people get a hold of you all? And there's if you go to the kybaptist.org/disaster, I think you can get some information. There's a phone number to call, and they'll send somebody to assess the house. They can't do everything, can't rebuild a house, but there are a lot of things they can do, and they definitely do all the icky stuff, clean out the mud and get stuff ready for somebody to come in if they have to do anything bigger than that.
Yeah, right now there's a big red banner across the front of the KBC website, kybaptist.org. If you click on that, that'll give you the information that you need. Of course, all this, the work of Kentucky Baptist Disaster Relief volunteers, made possible by the generous giving of Kentucky Baptist through the cooperative program. And Chip, that generosity was very evident again last month.
It sure was. For March, cooperative program giving, and let's explain that just a little bit. Churches, members give their tithes to their local church. Their local church then sends a designated amount. Each church determines what it can send to the cooperative program, and then the Kentucky Baptist Convention divides that up, sends half of it to Southern Baptist Convention. The other half stays with ministries and mission work inside Kentucky. Disaster Relief is one of those agencies that is funded by the money that people give to their local church that then makes its way through the cooperative program. There's so many others, and we look at the flooding. Eastern Kentucky, we're familiar with what happened there not many months ago. And then Frankfort, Louisville, obviously Western Kentucky, which has had a couple weeks ago, had bad flooding in a number of counties. But disaster relief is just one part of what the cooperative program does. Others, we have Sunrise Children's Services, Oneida Baptist Institute, Clear Creek Baptist Bible College, and church planners, Baptist Campus Ministries. So the great news is, let's be realistic, in these turbulent financial times, when the stock market is so volatile and people's Concern about inflation is rising. I think with every day, Kentucky Baptists have been faithful to give and give generously. So for March, came in almost at $2 million, was about just under $25,000 short of $2 million for that month. That's the second highest month of this fiscal year. We're 7 months into it, but it's also the second highest March in the last 7 years. So it's remarkable. I looked in January and February, of course, typically slow months economically. You're coming off of Christmas, and then you got a short time February, then March spring comes. But for February and March, CP giving was up over $425,000 over the previous year. And we look at our various missions offering. We've recently been collecting the Annie Armstrong offering in Kentucky Baptist churches, and that is not quite where it was last year, but it is making up ground. And also the Lottie Moon Christmas offering, which goes to support international missionaries who are still a little bit behind. So I would encourage Kentucky Baptists to look at those mission offerings and see what your church can do to help meet that void that is so desperately needed to send missionaries not only in North America but around the world.
Well, we are certainly grateful for the generosity of Kentucky Baptists, but you know, cooperation is more than just finances, yes, more than just giving. It's a spirit among Kentucky yes. Baptists, and we noted that in an editorial this week called Showing What Together for the Mission Really Means. And Mark, that piece highlights how Kentucky Baptists are cooperating and not competitive, a cooperating spirit, but not a competitive spirit. Mm-hmm. Talk about that.
Yeah, they're, pastors from the pulpit are praying for churches in their own area, maybe just a few miles away. They're saying, hey, bless this church. They're doing great work here, and they need our prayers. And, we didn't used to hear that very often. Right. And we see churches helping each other. I had a story last week on that very idea that Piney Grove, a little church in Knox County, who had fallen off to 6 members, and that, they didn't know what they were going to do. They were dying is what it looked like. And one deacon trustee who just didn't want to see it fail goes to a bigger church, First Baptist Church in Barberville, and talks to Pastor Tyler Shields, can you help us? It'd have been easy for him to say, six people, but he didn't. He said, yes, we can help. And he got someone who has done some revitalization, Tom Patterson, who went there, got the ball rolling as far as, what's wrong here, let's get along. They learned to get along. They end up getting and calling an interim pastor, Joey Woolham, who he happened to be Tom's nephew, and Tom's son, Tommy Patterson, was called as an education minister, and they've already grown. They're over 40 now. They just they've continued to grow. They're very positive about what's happening. Those men were voted in unanimously. The spirit has changed, and it wouldn't have changed had Tyler Shields said, I don't have time for that. But here's a church that's like 20 minutes from him, and he said, yes, I'll help. And I think, that's the spirit that I'm seeing from Kentucky Baptists all over the state, not just in these examples. And when churches are doing something big, social media is an easy way to shout somebody out, but we're seeing pastors shout other churches out. Way to go, and you baptized 20 today, or you baptized 2, or you baptized 1, whatever good that these churches are doing. We're hearing about it not from the church so much, but from other people. And I think that's very important to note.
That's great to hear. Cooperation, we work together for the mission, as we say, financially, but also otherwise in spirit. It's great to hear those kinds of stories. You can read those stories and read the editorial that we did on Kentucky Today right now. Let's turn to, this has been really more of a national story, but I want to get your take as Kentucky Baptist. Baptist missionary Josh Sullivan kidnapped from his church at gunpoint in South Africa, later rescued after a gun battle. Kentucky Baptist should note that he is not an IMB missionary. He's from an independent Baptist church, but this incident underscores the danger many missionaries are facing in order to spread the gospel. Right, Chip?
That's exactly right. And the real startling, for lack of a better word, aspect of this is how he has forgiven those who have caused him and his family such anxiety and put him in such danger. And, I'm definitely been influenced recently by the writings of Henry Blackaby and Experiencing God, who talks about that partnership that we've just talked about. And just because somebody's not an IMB missionary doesn't mean we cannot pray for them. We cannot help them in some way. We want to do that. I know Mark's affiliation with the ministry there in Africa. It's not an IMB project, but it's something that he's very passionate about, and his passion for that ministry has been contagious to us. So we all should be and I think what we've evidenced here and what we have referenced here, we're all in kingdom business together. Every church should be a world missions church. Doesn't mean that you might be too small to send a missionary or too small to give much money, but you can still have your eyes on the prize, and that is to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth.
Mark, as Chip mentioned, you were involved in mission work in Africa. Talk about this story quickly and kind of give me your perspective as someone who has spent some time in Africa.
Yeah, it's it's not safe in almost any part of it, and that includes Uganda, where I help a couple of missionaries there with Amy for Africa. It's danger. You don't get out at night, and because after not hearing anything for several days, you really start thinking the worst. And I know Chris and Amy Constant, who are the missionaries in with Amy for Africa, that they have faced some really scary situations with people. They had their home robbed. They cut through a screen door while they were sleeping. They took some things. They didn't hurt them, but they certainly could have. And it's just the Lord protects. And Amy asks for that all the time. Just pray for our protection. We know what the Lord has us here for a reason, and just please pray for our protection. They ride around on the little motorcycles, 2 and 3 of them, things you couldn't do in the United States. But it's also from some of the people who they don't want the gospel there. They don't want to hear it. We're dealing with Muslims. Our high school is built in a Muslim community. So there's a lot of wicked out there, I think, and including where IMB people are and where they're going to some places that nobody's ever gone, and they don't know, who knows what they're facing. So I think we need to pray for all our missionaries. Just hold them up for protection.
Yeah, absolutely right. Chip, I want to turn now to a story you wrote about another faithful servant, not a missionary, but a man who proves that you're never too old to serve.
That's right. John East, he's nearing age 84. John pastored for 20 years and then was a associational mission strategist. At that time, it was called a director of missions for 2 different associations, Baptist associations in Western Kentucky. Retired from those, and then a little church just outside of Marion, Kentucky, in Crittenden County, down to about 10 people. And he had supplied there, and he actually had done an interim in his better days. The church's pastor, who did a wonderful job, a wonderful man, he died of cancer. So the church asked John if he would come and just preach. Well, then that turned into, would you be our interim? And he technically still calls the name of interim or transitional pastor, But that church in his 18 months there has gone from 10 people to 40, and they built a very robust children's and students ministry on Wednesday nights. He reminds me of Caleb. You know, if you look in the Old Testament, Caleb, after he had wandered for 40 years in the wilderness, and he says, I'm 85 years old, but I'm just as strong as ever. And I think that's the mentality that John has. And as he voiced to me, he said, I want to serve the Lord as long as I can. With every day I've got left, I want to serve him. And, you know, we look here and Lawrence, you and Mark and I, we are definitely in the senior citizen category. But I think, you know, that's our desire.
Speak for yourself, okay, all right?
Well, you still are a senior citizen. And Deb, yes, I am older than the two of you, but you're not too far behind me.
Very true.
But we want to continue to serve, and what a blessing it is to serve. And I'll just take a moment. When I went to work with Kentucky Baptist Convention, I didn't have any idea what a blessing it was. And John spoke to that about he's serving, but he is blessed by what the Lord is doing there. He's encouraged by how the Lord is moving, and he understands it's not him, but it's the work of the Holy Spirit working in that church. And we see that here as we communicate with pastors and churches all over this state. They thank us for what we're doing, but I will tell you, we are the ones who are blessed.
Indeed we are. Good story. That was an encouraging story. As we record this, Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday, is coming up this weekend. Our readers should look for an editorial to drop soon. We're recording this on Wednesday, maybe out on Thursday, that highlights things we are grateful for this Easter, and we gave several examples of how the light of the gospel continues to penetrate our dark culture. So look for that tomorrow. It's an editorial that should give people encouragement and hope as they go into the Easter season. All right, I want to wrap up by hearing your thoughts from each of you on Easter. Mark, I know you'll be celebrating there in northern Kentucky at your church. What any traditions that your family has for Easter?
You know, this will be the first Sunday we haven't really been with a whole lot of family, because we're actually going into Ashland, but we're coming back Saturday because of the, you know, we're in the choir and we're singing and doing things on Sunday morning at Easter, and usually we're in Ashland with everybody. So it's a little different for us, but that's okay. We are planning on enjoying the day, and you know, I love the Easter season. I can remember growing up as a young boy, and we'd go to the sunrise service all the time, you know, and back then the sunrise service was sunrise. It was, you know, 6:30 in the morning, and you know, we were there. We were there when the church doors opened at any time. But I can remember those. Those were good times, and just the, you know, but Easter to me, you know, I know we celebrate and it's all great and everything, but you know, I also think about Jesus' suffering during that time. And, you know, he talked about the cup, if that cup would pass. You know, that cup, that was everybody's sin. That was, you know, as for the sins of then, the sins now, and all sins. That was what that cup was full of. And, you know, I just, you know, I'm just thankful to have Jesus in my life. And I praise him. And I praise him for what he did, for, you know, coming back from the dead and giving me new life, and giving giving us all new life, and a lot of other people too. And I think if people would just get a glimpse of that, they would want it as well.
Well, I'll come in a second, Chip, but if people want to know what the resurrection means, they should go read 1 Corinthians 15, Paul's writing. That'll give you the scoop from the apostle on the impact of the resurrection. But Chip, give me your thoughts on Resurrection Sunday.
Well, and you said it perfectly, Lawrence. You know, you can there are other religions in this world, and people who say there's not much difference in them, they are sorely mistaken, because Jesus is the only one who has risen from the grave and ascended back into heaven, where he sits at the right hand of the Father, forever making intercession for us. So that is what is so significant. You know, we use the acronym CEO Christians, and that stands for Christmas and Easter only Christians, and we'll have a lot of people in our churches across this state, across
and we
this
welcome
nation.
them in.
Yes, we welcome them in. We're glad they're there. We want to take every opportunity to invite people in, and that's an opportunity for them to hear the gospel, the good news of Jesus, of his atoning death, his sacrifice for the sins of the world, and that they can have a relationship with him by just trusting in him, repenting of their sins, trusting in him as their Savior. So we're glad people are there. We want the houses of worship, our houses of worship, to be full, and we want that opportunity to share the gospel with them. And I heard a story this week of a church that man said, I came in, I was mad at God at what he had done or not done in my life. And then when I heard this church we're not perfect people. We are all sinners, and don't feel uncomfortable here because we feel your pain if you are not a Christian. And he said, I was looking for a way to get out of that church, but when I heard that, I thought, this is different. This is not what I expected. And so that's what we want people to understand. Everybody has their problems in this life, but Jesus is the one. He is the answer to every problem you have in life, and we want to be able to share that message with everyone that we can.
All right. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Mark. And on a personal note, this will be our first Easter, Resurrection Sunday. We're looking forward to Christmas too with our grandson, Gideon. Yeah. So that'll be fun he's almost a year old, so it'll be fun to see him and to celebrate that with him. All right.
Hey, I got two pieces of advice for Kentucky Baptists that are planning on going to church. Sit toward the front and move to the middle. You don't have to have your regular seat. Let's make it comfortable for other guests that are coming in.
A good piece of advice to close on. Thanks, Mark. And thank you for joining us. For the latest, go to KentuckyToday.com. For more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention, go to kybaptist.org. Enjoy the Resurrection Day in your church with your brothers and sisters in Christ. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.